Hello, hello. This is Irene with SaugaTalks. Hello. Thank you for tuning in. We definitely appreciate the attention we get, okay? Because SaugaTalks is on LinkedIn, on X, on YouTube. We're on major podcasting platforms, and we keep talking to fascinating people in tech. Today, I'm extremely privileged because John Corcoran is with me. John, how are you?
I'm great. Thanks for having me, Irene.
Absolutely. It's my pleasure because I know we connected before, and the interest that, again, my audience expresses that I'm myself very curious about, because all the conversation I'm having here, it's actually about, learning from smart people, from capable people, from successful people, all right? And learning something new every day. So, John, I wanted to talk to you about today about AI, no wonder, right? It's everywhere. It's all over my feed, wherever I go, it follows me. So conversation is about content marketing. And to me, right, it's the main articles, the main content we're getting about this. It's about how AI is automating, helping creators to automate, or with data analysis, okay? What about some lesser known kind of ways AI is transforming or not?
Yeah, sure. Well, it has been quite transformative so far, and I think that we have a long ways to go. I think we're just at the beginning, we're at the starting line of this marathon. I think that there is a lot of ways that AI will make content creation easier, but I also think that as it gets to the point where we'll be able to basically generate a conversation like this that will be virtually indistinguishable. Someone will watch this maybe a year from now, maybe 6 months from now, we'll watch this and not know whether it is real people talking or not. That I think that it will, in many ways, I was talking with someone about this yesterday, it will make us appreciate things that are authentic. It will make us appreciate the value of authenticity. So I know this is real. You know this is real because we're having a two-way conversation with one another. We know that it's not fake. And if you and I were to get together in a group of 10 people, 12 people over dinner in the evening, we know that's not fake. We know that's authentic. So I think that it will, in many ways, it will increase the value of true authenticity if there are other things that will exist out there that we don't know whether they're real or not. If we can't judge whether a YouTube video is real or fake, if we can't judge whether a podcast interview is real or fake because it's a two-way conversation between two people and we don't know whether they're real or not, then I think that what will happen is that we will have a craving and a desire. It will put a premium on experiences or networking or interactions which we know are authentic. So that's a long way of kind of saying that I think that as AI proliferates, it will make content marketing easier, but it also will reinforce the value of things that we've been doing for a very long time, which is really like, craving human connection with others.
Absolutely. To me, human connection that you mentioned, right? It will still be authentic in years to come, right? We don't go anywhere, right? Versus AI automation. So what about storytelling, all right? Because I know marketeers, everyone, right, have access to fantastic tools now, right? To use all the help in the world, right? But how to keep this story, I wish we knew, right? Interesting, engaging, and authentic with all the tools in the world.
Yeah, how to keep it interesting, engaging, and authentic. Well, I think that one is we have become multi-platform, and people have become accustomed to getting their content where they want to receive it. So, some people use YouTube. My kids want to use YouTube all day long. Other people, it might be TikTok. Other people, it might be their podcast feed. It's on their phone, they want to consume things, or they want to be able to consume it on their laptop or their tablet or whatever. And so people are expecting those sorts of things. They also want it in the format that is native to that solution. So if they're on Instagram, they're not going to watch an hour and a half video. They're going to watch a 30-second video, if that, a 10-second video. And so for content marketing, you have to be where people are and where they expect you to be. So taking a video like this and cutting it up into short little snippets and sharing it on a different platform is just a way to get more mileage out of the content that you're already creating. I think that's going to be really helpful for people, and it's going to be the way that people want to experience things in the future.
Fantastic. And yet, of course, right, everyone is kind of, reaching for those strategies that seem to be by the book. Okay, you can ask ChatGPT, it will give you best strategy, roadway, how to grow your business. But from the expert like yourself, John, any particular points you would like to share? I mean, what we cannot do nowadays? I mean, probably nothing. But where is this meat that marketers should still have in their mind when putting strategies?
Well, I'll give you, I'll give you an example. So, I think that if we can help people, if people can create content faster with it taking less time, they will do it. No one ever objected to that. So, for example, I yesterday had an interview of a client where I had to, I wanted to prepare for the interview. And that always has been kind of a pain point for me, is like, do I want to read through this person's LinkedIn and their website and learn about them and maybe listen to another podcast interview and stuff like that? Well, I decided I would experiment with Google Notebook LM, which is a tool that just came out recently. And what I did is I uploaded some information about them to Google Notebook LM, and then I created a 2-person conversation. It's basically like a podcast of the people talking about that person, and then I listened to it at 2 times speed. So I listened to them talking about this person who I was about to interview. Now, for me, it was a great experience because it went a lot quicker. I got the information I needed, and I was ready for the interview. And so I'm able to create the content a lot quicker that way. Now, some other things that are really exciting are ways in which we can take content and then turn it into, a variety of different platforms and mediums. So, for example, we could, in the very near future, we could use AI to take this conversation that you and I are having. Let's pretend that we're doing this for a large company, and it's serving for both content marketing purposes externally and also for internal training purposes. Well, what if this is a large company that has people, all over the globe in different locations that speak 10 different languages? Well, we could take this video and immediately turn it so that you and I are speaking Spanish, and you and I are speaking Mandarin, and you and I are speaking Greek. And it's all translated. The video stays the same, but it's all translated into that local native language, and that can be used for content marketing purposes, and also be used for internal training purposes. That's really cool and exciting. That we will be able to do that, and it's not as expensive as it would have been previously, and it's a lot more engaging and authentic for people. So I think those are kind of some cool applications for AI.
Exactly. What about content saturation? Okay, because looks like everyone is doing something nowadays, right? So it's easy for everyone. That's why competition is even tougher. But again, about saturation, how to stand out, how to really deliver the message.
Yeah, I mean, I think that saturation will be less of a problem. I think that the advantage will be that there are more areas for more niche interests. Now, I remember when I got started doing podcasts 13, 14 years ago, there wasn't as much content out there. Now, if I want to learn about, for example, I just put in a new HVAC system, heating and cooling system in my house, and I spent a lot of time educating myself about that process. I could go onto, Spotify, and I could search for, heat pumps, and I could learn all about it, and that's a very niche interest that I was curious about. So now there's more and more content out there in very niche particular areas. If I'm going, for example, I'm going to Seattle in January. If I want to learn about Seattle, I can go and listen to a bunch of podcast interviews. I did this last year. I went to a remote part of Colorado, southeastern Colorado, near the these big sand dunes, and I wanted to learn about the area before I went. So I went on Spotify and I searched and I learned all about that area from different podcast episodes. So yeah, there's more content saturation, but it's also filling a need and an interest for people who are really curious and want to know or want to consume content about very specific, areas. And it's in a way that they want to consume, and people are listening to podcasts when they're driving, when they're walking, when they're working out, when they're doing the dishes, when they're walking the dog. They want to listen to this, content. And so it's filling needs in all these very specific niche areas that people are interested in consuming content around.
True. What about replacing some of the roles? I know everyone talking about it, okay, replacing marketeers or replacing all kinds of specialists, right? In, let's say, podcasting business, okay, do you see the producing role is changing or becoming obsolete because AI now can take notes, can edit videos, can propose the best, even edits, right, to the video and cuts videos to different platforms, what you mentioned, right? What about us human? How
I think it's more tantamount to like the evolution of journalism over the last 25, 30 years. 30 years ago, it was very expensive and time consuming to build a newsroom and to publish a media publication, whether it was a newsletter, a newspaper, or a magazine or something like that. Now virtually any company can create its own media distribution channel, and they can do it with a handful of people. And they can do multimedia, and they can create, share content worldwide, and it's at a fraction of the cost. But there's 100 times more media outlets out there, 1,000 times, 10,000 times more media outlets out there, and it's created all kinds of different jobs and opportunities for people in different areas, and people can work all over the globe. I mean, one of the exciting things about our company is that we have a remote team that works all over the globe, and we have moms that are busy and have kids and they need to pick them up after school, and they never they could not take care of their kids and also work in a newsroom that they have to be there from 9 a.m. until 6 p.m. That would not have worked for them, but they have the work flexibility and the life flexibility now to be able to work remotely and still manage their family. And so I think that's really cool and exciting. So, the tools will change and evolve, and the tools will become more robust, but there will be more demand for niche types of content. And there will be more companies that decide in the years ahead that maybe I could create a podcast and maybe I can do more content marketing because it's more accessible to me now. Even if it's something little like, preparing for the interview, like I explained earlier, and makes it more interesting and engaging for them and less time consuming. Instead of spending, 2 hours reading up on their guest beforehand, they can consume a very niche 9-minute long two-way conversation and get prepared for the interview that they're going to conduct, in a way that was never possible before.
I'm on the same page. Absolutely. It looks like I listen to podcasts all the time, whatever I'm doing, outside exercising or even, grocery shopping. And I'm a podcaster myself. So absolutely, I get the value for sure. Let's talk about challenges and limitations though. Okay. Because there's certain challenges for sure of, introducing new tools to the teams, kind of organizational mind shifts, right? Role changing, people becoming insecure. Okay, let's not, let's not undervalue that, right? So what are the limitations you see in terms of that, the actual adoption of the tools? Because again, right, every organization has its own culture and the shift's not happening overnight for sure.
Yeah. So I have a little bit of a different approach to as far as the tools are concerned. I actually don't think it's a good use of a founder or CEO of a B2B company to really be worried about the various different tools or to teach themselves the various different tools. For me, I've been doing a podcast for 14 years. If I had to start a podcast completely from scratch myself, I wouldn't know how to do it because all of that I've offloaded to my team. And I don't, it's not the highest and best use of my time to know how to use all those different tools. And so I would say the same thing for a B2B business. If you have a B2B business, you have a high client lifetime value. The most valuable use of your time is to have another conversation related to your service or your offering, either with a current client, a prospective client, a referral partner, strategic partner. That is the highest and best use of your time. It's like there are people that create podcasts and then they spend 2 hours, 3 hours afterwards poring over the transcript and editing the transcript. That's a complete waste of their time. It's not a good use of their time at all. So I say that as far as the tools are concerned. And then you also addressed like insecurity. I would group that in terms of psychological barriers around podcasting. And that is a bigger barrier than tools are to people doing a podcast, because it comes up, it's very insidious. Insidious. People don't notice it. They don't realize it, that it's getting in the way or stopping them. And it might show up in terms of like, I'm not going to reach out to that person to invite them on my podcast because they'll say no anyways. Or, I get really uncomfortable having a conversation with my clients because I'm worried or whatever. And so I don't want to interview them for the podcast. Those are different psychological barriers to get in the way. Or I can't get started podcasting now because everyone else has started already and everyone else is doing it already. And who's going to say yes to me to be a guest on a podcast? That's a psychological barrier. That's an insecurity. Or how am I going to look on camera? I'm worried I'm not going to look that good. It's not going to be perfect. My hair is going to look bad or whatever, Those are all psychological barriers that need to be overcome, frankly, because they will stop people from getting involved with what I think has been one of the greatest gifts to my life, both personally and professionally. I mean, literally some of the best relationships, friendships. I've been to people's weddings who I connected with through podcasting. I've been on vacation with people who I've connected with through podcasting. So many great meals, friendships, relationships, not to mention all the incredible knowledge that I've gained from the ability to talk to a smart person or talk to someone who has built a business massively larger than my own and be able to ask questions that I'm curious about. Those that just incredible benefits that will come to your life. But these little insidious psychological barriers will either stop people from ever starting, or it will drag them down. It will prevent them from continuing, which oftentimes is the bigger barrier. People oftentimes start and they do it for a little while and then they stop. I'll give you another example. Another psychological barrier is just the perceived potential rejection that in their mind may come from actively going out and inviting people to be a guest on their podcast. So I've seen lots of people that have started a podcast and then they quit, and they quit because they don't like the process of reaching out and inviting people on the podcast. We literally in our company had to create an additional offering. We had to do that for them. And we have had many clients that continue doing the podcast for years longer than they would have otherwise, because the simple process of just sending polite messages out, inviting people to come, come be a guest on the podcast was something that was not overcomable for people. They just couldn't do it. And so it was just a psychological barrier that, potential rejection or putting themselves out there was too much for them. And so oftentimes I've seen it many times, that has just torpedoed someone from continuing to do a podcast, and they stop doing it after a couple of months because they can't bear doing that. And I think that's, it's sad, but that's why we created a separate solution in order to help people with that. But those are some of the different, barriers, I believe, that we see people commonly encounter.
I happen to be in this business, all right? I love inviting people, okay? But overcoming that barrier is not easy for sure. So the advice to marketeers, to business leaders out there, okay? Among multiple tactics they include in their strategies, they better have different tactics, right? So I'm a podcast fan, I'm a podcast creator, all right? So what is it? I would say somewhat effort-consuming podcast producing, right? Even with all the tools we have, all right? There is investment of time and effort and budget into that work. So how does it feel in bigger B2B strategy?
Yeah, I think it It depends on the size of your company. If we're talking about a smaller company where the client lifetime value is lower, then it might be something that you handle entirely yourself, or that you use various different tools in order to create it. I'll speak from experience. So when I started podcasting 14 years ago, I was an attorney practicing law. I had very little staff or administrative support. I was pretty much just a solopreneur. I had a bookkeeper and things like that. I had some people helping me, but not very much. And I'd outsource some of the pieces of creating my podcast, like the editing of it. But I was still the bottleneck on it. And I did it inconsistently for the first couple of years. And then I had a year where I actually liked doing the interviews, but I didn't actually publish any episodes all year long. And I look back at the end of the year and I was like, what am I doing wrong? Because at the time, my business partner and I, Jeremy, had started a different business together. And he had started his podcast a couple of years before me, put great systems in place, and he was putting out 100 pieces of content through his podcast per year. And I turned to him and I said, what am I doing wrong here? And I realized that I was the bottleneck. I was too involved in the process. And so what I did is I removed myself from that. And when I did, it freed me up to really embrace my superpower, which is having conversations with people for the purpose of interviews for the podcast, and then let the team handle the rest of it. And once I did that, that's when things really took off for me. And, it does require a larger investment, because if you're going to require, turn it over to other humans. And so obviously for a smaller business, that's a bigger challenge to do. But it allowed me to keep on doing it, whereas I probably would have quit if I was still editing writing the show notes myself, editing the show notes myself, uploading it to the website, publishing it on the website, managing that whole process. It just drove me bonkers. I just really didn't enjoy that element of it. Once I removed myself from all that, I loved it. I really enjoyed it a lot more, and it's allowed me to keep on going. So, if you have a larger company, it's a B2B business, you have a high client lifetime value. If getting another client is going to mean $100,000 to your business, $200,000 for your business, or whatever that number is, look, best thing you can do is have another conversation with a prospect, with a referral partner, and use the podcast in order to get introductions to other prospective clients that might one day become a client. That is the best use of your time. And so it's not worth your time to be editing show notes or transcripts or, project managing the process yourself, or any of that kind of stuff. You should have someone else, have a company like mine, who handles that for you, so that you can go and, instead of having 10 or 20 or 15 conversations over the course of a year, have 30 or 40. That's going to be a much bigger impact for you.
Yeah, prioritizing, right? Knowing what you're really good at and knowing what's the heart of your company, and really investing in those skills that you think are the best in-house, and of course outsourcing those that really belong somewhere else, right? You don't have to grow each and every function in your own business. That's where we come in. So I do want to encourage everyone to follow John Corcoran and Rise25 on LinkedIn. Any other platforms, John? Let's invite our viewers to.
Yeah, LinkedIn's great. Certainly email me if you have any questions, john@rise25.com. Our website is rise25.com. And thanks so much for having me, Irene.
Oh, absolutely. We're not done yet. All right. I'm stepping into like B2B and networking. Okay. Because every conversation I'm having here on technology, right, on the best tools possible. And yet those tools enhance us, right, enhance our own networking and connecting practices. So good advice to business leaders, everyone, marketeers, not marketeers, right? Maybe heads of the companies, okay? In terms of networking and getting value out of your time, speaking of priorities, right? Any good advice from you, John?
As far as networking goes, so it's a bit.
Yes, network connecting, okay, with tools, without tools, but what are the ways to kind of grow the business?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I was talking earlier today with some B2B business owners about using LinkedIn and Twitter and all the different social platforms out there. What I do is I'm very deliberate about it. So I use, LinkedIn to find people that I'm interested in that maybe, someone that I met at a conference, or some speaker that I'm interested in hearing speaking at a conference. Or it might be someone that, is in my industry, or I'm in a group with them of some sort, networking group or something like that. And then I will use the podcast in order to reach out to them. I will reach out and say, hey, we have this thing in common, or this connection, or we met at this conference. I'd love to have you on my podcast. And it's a great way to kind of network. It's a great way to continue the relationship, because a lot of times the struggle is you have people that are loose connections in your industry. It could be people that are, in your industry that tangentially. It could be people that you meet at a conference. It could be someone you meet at a networking event. And how do you take that relationship further? And the busier someone is, the harder it is to take that relationship further, because they're busy. They're going to be assessing, oh, is this person trying to sell me? Do I have other things that I should be doing? And so the podcast bridges that gap. It gives you that opportunity to then take that relationship further, get to know them better, and you're also delivering value to them. You're giving them exposure. You're putting them on a pedestal. You are highlighting their experiences. You're talking to them about, or you're taking curiosity about their stories that, in many cases, their spouse is sick of hearing, their friends are sick of hearing, their family are sick of hearing, but you're naturally curious about them. And so it really leverages the principle of reciprocity, because then people want to repay the favor in some way. And so that, to me, podcasting is new school networking. It's like networking on steroids. It is a far more effective way of networking. And, I shudder to think back when I was an attorney practicing law at a tiny little practice. I'm in a small county. I would go to coffee or lunch with other lawyers all the time. And it was, I was lucky if I got someone to meet with me for lunch or coffee. A lot of times it was just not very interesting talking to these people. I wasn't repurposing that hour, because that conversation was off into the ether. It wasn't a recorded thing that became content marketing, which is effectively what you're doing when you're doing a podcast. You're having a two-way conversation with someone. You're taking curiosity. You're naturally interested in them. They're telling their stories. You're capturing it. And then that serves as content marketing for you for years to come. Whereas when I was networking with someone over coffee or lunch or something like that, at best, at the end of the conversation, you're both like, so, glad I know more about your business. I will think about you, and I'll see if I know anyone I can refer to you. And nothing ever happened. Very little ever happened. So I found that just plowing your networking into doing a podcast and content marketing was far more effective.
Fantastic. I'm nodding way too much than I should, because I'm very biased to this part of life. For sure, yeah. Absolutely. This is what we're doing. We're meeting great people. All my digital friends who support me now on LinkedIn, on X, on YouTube, right? Many of them were my guests, and many of them, right, we connected right through podcasting. Totally.
Yeah, so you can network can really evolve and change in whatever direction you want it to. And I've been doing the podcast for 14 years, and we have used the podcast in different industries at this point, because my business has evolved over that time. 14 years ago, I was an attorney practicing law. Now I have a very different business, and my business has evolved a bit over that time. And so whatever industry you decide is your industry, whether it's what you do right now, or it's a direction you want to go in. A lot of times I talk to business owners, and they're like, well, we serve this type of client now, but we really would like to serve this type of client, right? Well, whatever direction you want to go in, your network is constantly evolving and changing. And so you can come up with a list of who you want your network to be, and then use the podcast in order to reach out to those people. And that will become your new network across these different channels. Today, it might be LinkedIn, and it might be X, and it might be, whatever channels we use now. And in the future, it might be a different network. And it might be a network that is through your, the old-fashioned term, for a network. It's just your Rolodex, your people that through your industry. So, I think it's an amazing tool for networking, for sure.
Fantastic. And it's an agent, right? It's engine that you have at your disposal, right? To use it the way, John, you describing. Fabulous. Wow, time is flying. All right. I don't want to impose on your busy day more than I should. At the same time, I'm enjoying this conversation immensely, John. Before I let you go, all right, would you like to finish maybe with few key takeaways? Okay, because we started with technology, but we went very quickly to the professional expertise, how technology helping us, and how we have to kind of think what the priorities are to make the best use of it. So maybe a few takeaways.
Yeah, so I would say one, since we touched on it earlier, we were talking about the psychological elements of it. Be mindful of that. Think about what is holding you back from creating content if you haven't already. Or if you have created content, what is stopping you now from doing more of it? So I would say be mindful of that psychological piece, because I see that stop people all the time. And those are usually the first questions that people ask me. Well, how can I get people to say yes on my podcast if I have never done it before and I don't have a big audience? Well, that is overcomable. It's a psychological barrier that people have. And it's really just about communicating to your guests that it's a good use of their time. And there are many ways to do that. So I think that's one piece of it. And then another one is, for a real practical tip, take some time to really map out what direction you want your network to grow into. Who are the clients that you love working with? You want more clients just like them. Who are the referral partners, the champions that you want more people like that? Who are the heads of industry, the executive directors of communities and associations that are in your industry that you would love to have as your network? Who are those people? Because that's the beginning of the list. We call it the Dream 200. The people that you would love to have an in-depth, high quality, high caliber, just like we're doing here today, conversation with those people. And it will take you some time to do this. This is not something that you are going to finish doing by next month. But, that is the roadmap for you for the next 6 to 12 to 24 months of the people that you want to build your network with. And if you devote your energy and attention to reaching out to those people, having them on the podcast, having a great conversation with them, then that will lay the groundwork for everything else that will come afterwards. Because then you've got to network with these people, and you can you go to dinner with them when you are in the same city. You can meet up with them at a conference. You can talk about collaboration, ways in which you can partner with them. All kinds of opportunities will come from it later, but you got to start with the ground floor of coming up with a list and then using a tool like a podcast in order to build and deepen those relationships.
Fantastic. Thank you. Thank you so very much, John. I encourage everyone again to follow John, to reach out to John Corcoran and Rise 25. Talk to us at SaugaTalks. We'll make the connection with John and his team. So we're here to really popularize, right? Podcasting is a fantastic tool. I hope we convince you of that. If not, reach out. We'll have follow-up conversation. Thank you.
Thanks so much.